In this video, I'm going to show you how I edit stand-up comedy videos in DaVinci Resolve. Let's dive in. So the first thing I'm going to do is get my project folder all set up. And I've got a template project folder here that I will share a link to in the description below. I'm just going to duplicate that, and then I'm going to rename it. And I usually just do the date of the actual shoot. So this was February 15th. Perfect. So right now this is stored in iCloud, but it's a little bit easier to have it stored locally on your hard drive instead of trying to reference videos in the cloud. So I'm going to drag it to my local projects directory. Yep. And I'm actually going to copy and paste the entire SD card into the footage directory. But with the magic of editing, you don't have to watch me do that. All right, now that I have all my footage copied over, let's jump right into DaVinci Resolve. Now, everything that we're going to be doing here today, you can do in the free version of DaVinci. I have the studio version, but again, everything we're doing, you should be able to do in the free version. All right, I'm going to double click on Untitled Project. Now, just to make sure that our workspaces look the same, I'm going to go ahead and select Workspace at the top and click on Reset UI Layouts. All right, so let's import our media. I'm going to click on the Media tab here in the bottom left. And then I'm going to Command Tab over to my Finder and just highlight both the audio and the footage folders, and we're just going to click and drag those into this area here. If you do get a message saying change project frame rate, go ahead and change it. The reason I'm getting that is my default project in DaVinci is set to 23,976 frames per second, but I shot this video in 29,970, so we're going to go ahead and change that. And why don't we take a second just to make sure all of our settings are the same. So I'm going to click on Project Settings in the bottom right-hand corner. For timeline resolution, I am going to keep this as Ultra HD because that's what I shot the video in. And for timeline frame rate, it's already set it to 29,970. Let's also go over to the color management tab here. Now, I work in a color managed workspace. It's just the workflow I've learned and I like to do. If you want to follow along and have your settings be the same as mine, I'd recommend copying these. For color science, I'm going to select DaVinci YRGB. For timeline color space, let's use DaVinci Wide Gamut Intermediate. And for output color space, I'm going to select Rec 709 Gamma 2.2. We're not going to go into the nitty-gritty of color science because I don't know it. There are plenty of other people who do, and I recommend checking out their videos. I'll link to those in the description below. You would click save, but since I didn't change anything, I'm going to hit cancel. All right, now the next thing I'm going to do is just fix my clips. Now my video clip has 4 different audio tracks attached to it, and I only want the first one. Your camera may be different, so you might just have 1 audio track attached to it, and that's fine. I just need to fix this real quick. So to do that, I'm going to right-click on the video file. I'm going to go up to Clip Attributes, over to the Audio tab, and then I'm just going to delete channels 2, 3, and 4. I usually set those as like redundant backups. It's kind of nice to be able to record 2 different levels in case somebody blows out one of them. I'm going to hit OK. Now, I've got separate audio and video files here because I also use a Zoom H4n Pro to record audio from the stage. What I do is set this bad boy up with the stereo mics pointed out towards the audience, and then actually splice off a feed from the comedian's microphone as well, so I can record directly out of that and get perfect sound coming out of the microphone. I don't have to wait for it to go back to the mixer and come back here when you could get some sort of interference and whatever. The only downside is for the comedian's microphone, it does take both of these tracks and form them together as a stereo track, when really I only want this one track as a mono track. So let's change that. I'm going to right-click on that clip, go to Clip Attributes, and I'm going to change the format to mono. And it's already left me with the one I want, Embedded Channel 1. I'm going to click OK. And that's it. Now let's create our timeline. So to do that, I'm going to right-click on this video file here and go all the way to the top where it says Create New Timeline using Selected Clip. And I'm going to name the timeline just the same thing as I named the project, which is 2025-02-15. I usually just do the date. All right, let's double-click on that to get in. I'm going to hit Shift-C just so I can see the entire timeline all at once. And while I'm at it here, I'm going to name the first audio track Scratch. Now, I do that because I'm actually not going to use that audio, and it's just the audio coming out of the camera, so it's not very good anyway. And next, I'm going to drag and drop in my comedian's mic. I'll just drag that into the track below. And let's go ahead and resize this here to make some room. And then I'm going to drag and drop in the audience audio file too. And while we're at it, let's rename these just to keep things clear. Comedian and audience. Okay, now the next thing I'm going to do is align these clips. So to do that, I'm going to select the audio and video clip and then command click on the microphone from the audience track. And then I'm going to right click and select auto align clips. And we're going to use waveform for this since I didn't use timecode. And click sync. What this does is it just looks at the waveforms for the two files and tries to match them up as perfectly as possible. And honestly, 99 out of 100 times, it works perfectly. Actually, I don't think I've ever had it not work perfectly. All right, great. I've got my camera audio and my audience audio all synced up. The next thing to do is I'm going to drag my comedian mic and link that up as well. Now, the only reason I didn't select all 3 tracks and do the auto align is because it takes a little longer when you add a whole nother track. And plus, I know that since both the audience and the comedian's track came out of this little guy, they're going to start and stop at exactly the same time. So I'm going to select the camera and the audience audio, and I'm going to drag them back here just to give myself a little bit of room. And then I can move the comedian mic just until it aligns with the audience track. And we can zoom all the way in by hitting Command plus just to see down to the frame if they align, and they do. Perfect. While we're here, I'm going to select everything and link them all together so I don't accidentally get them out of alignment. I'm just going to highlight everything, hit Option Command L, and now they are all linked. So if I click away and click back, they're all good. Next, I'm going to just trim off the front and back so that all the clips are exactly the same length. You don't have to do this, but it just makes things look a lot nicer, I think. I'm going to hit Shift Z just to get back out to the big view here, and we'll start from the front. I'm going to hit the up arrow to go to the next ending point, or to go to the first ending point, and I'm going to hit Command backslash just to make a cut. Now I'll select that little trim part and hit delete, and I'll hit the down arrow just to go to the next end point, and that is where we will make another cut point. Select that, hit delete. Next, I'm going to delete this headspace up front just by clicking into the empty space and hitting delete. Now, normally what you do is edit this video first and then apply any sort of color grade to it. But since this is the same scene, it's the same lighting, the same camera settings and everything else, I'm just going to grade the entire thing all at once, and then we'll go back and edit them up. To do that, I'm going to click on the color tab, and I'm going to close our gallery here and just make some room. I'm going to close the clips tab. There we go. So I shot this in a log gamma, which basically means it's a flattened file, not much contrast, no saturation, and I can add that all back in. Your results may vary depending on what you shot yours in, so I'm going to show you what I do, and hopefully you can kind of translate that to whatever you're shooting at. So what we're going to do is take that Canon log color space, convert it to DaVinci Wide Gamut, which is a larger color space. We'll do all of our edits there, and then we'll convert out to Rec. 709 Gamma 2.2, which, long story short, that's just what our monitors and the internet would be expecting. So I'm going to create a new node here by hitting Option S, and then I'm going to click on the Effects tab. I'm going to go down to Color Space Transform, and I'm going to drag one to the first node and one to the second node. Great, so I'm going to click on the first node. Now my input color space is what I shot this in. So I use a Canon C70, it was set to C-Log 3. So I'm going to say my color space is Canon Cinema Gamut, and my gamma is Canon Log 3. Again, yours is going to be slightly different. If you're shooting on Sony, it might be Cine Gamut 3 or something, or S-Log 2 for input gamma. You got to check on whatever you shot with. Now for output color space, I'm going to say DaVinci Wide Gamut, and output gamma, I'm going to say DaVinci Intermediate. Now for our output color space transform, I'm basically going to do the reverse. I'm going to take the input color space, which is DaVinci Wide Gamut, and input gamma, which is DaVinci Intermediate, and I'm going to output Rec. 709 and Gamma 2.2. So this actually looks okay as is. I think we're off to a great starting point, but I think we can make a few changes to kind of make it look a little nicer. I might brighten it up just a little bit and maybe increase the contrast. So I'm going to click on this first node and hit Option S to add a new serial node. And while we're at it, I'm just going to close this Effects tab. So why don't we brighten this up first? I'm going to right click on this and change the node label just to keep things straight. And why don't I do that with these other guys as well? That's DaVinci Wide Gamut, and then this is, whoops, and then this outputs to Rec. 709. Okay, so now I'm going to go down to my primaries here, and why don't we just boost up the gain a little bit just to make it brighter. This is probably going to end up on the internet somewhere, and I usually like a little bit brighter when it goes out to the internet. The internet. I sound like I'm 45 or 55 and not a cool kid. All right, let's click on our scopes over here, and I'm going to change the parade to waveform and hit these three dots to say display qualifier focus so that I can take my qualifier tool here, hover over my face, and see what the levels are there. And that actually looks like about where I like them. I kind of like them to be around 40 to 50, and I know the red's a little warm because I've got a red face there in that spot, but I think that looks pretty good. So next, let's add some contrast. So I'm going to add a new serial node here by hitting Option S, and let's label this just to keep everything straight. By the way, if you want to learn a little bit more about color grading, I would highly recommend checking out Darren Mostyn's YouTube channel. It is absolutely fabulous. He goes very in-depth, but also makes it very accessible. That's how I learned all about this stuff. I'll link to it in the description below. All right, so let's boost our contrast just a little bit here. I kind of like that. Here, let's make this a little larger. Now, if you want, you can hit Command F to make it look bigger. And that actually looks pretty good. Yeah, I don't mind that. Maybe I'll back off a little bit on the contrast. And the brightness, let's just drop the gain a little bit. That's great. I think that'll look pretty good. So why don't we call it here and move over to the Edit tab. I'm going to click on the Edit tab here on the bottom. And why don't we just make some room here. I'm going to go to the upper right and just do the single tab view. I'm going to shut down our media pool window over here. I'm going to shrink this. Now all I'm doing is just kind of making some space so I can see this video a little bit better. All right, Shift Z to zoom in a little bit. Now I taped this entire comedy show. So for this step, all I'm really looking to do here is just trim it down to the point where I introduce everybody and say, all right, your next comic coming to the stage is, and then end with that person saying, thank you, good night, deleting the stuff in between. I'll show you how to do one or two, and then you don't have to watch me do the rest of these. All right, so let's get started. I'm going to zoom in here, and let's just scrub around until I see where I take the stage. Okay, perfect. So I'm going to make a cut right there and just cut off all this headspace. I don't need it. Now I know that I did about 10 to 12 minutes up top hosting this show, so I'm going to go, let's zoom out a little bit here. I'm going to go to like the 10 to 12 minute mark. So it looks like right there is where I introduced the first comedian. Let's zoom in and make that first cut. Okay, perfect. So I'm just going to cut it right about here. Perfect. We got Ben Freeberg coming to the stage now. And I know he did about 6 or 7 minutes, so I'm going to just kind of zoom out and buzz over to that point. Okay, perfect. Let's zoom back in. Okay, so a couple of seconds of applause, and we'll make another cut. All right, so let's move on to the next comedian. So I'm just going to find the next cut point here. All right, there we go. Give it up for Jonathan. So now I'm going to delete this point here in the middle by just selecting it and hitting delete. And I'll hit Command minus just to zoom out. And now we can see we have me up top here. Then we've got the next comedian, Ben, coming on. Oh, before we get too far, the one thing I will tell you that I do is I like to name these clips as I go, just so I know which comedian it is. So to do that, I'm going to right-click on that clip, go to Clip Attributes, go over to Name, and type in that person's name. So that's me. This next one here, Ben Freeberg. I think it's a Freeberg with a U. Okay. All right, I'm going to finish up editing all the rest of these, and then we'll come back for the export here in just a second. All right, I finished editing all of these clips. The next step is to export. So let's go over to the Deliver tab. So for the file name, I'm actually going to use the clip name as the name of the file. So that way I don't have to change it every single time. That's why we went through earlier and named each one of those clips. To do that, I'm going to delete the untitled part, and I'm going to do %, clip, name, hit enter. Now it'll take the name of the clip, in this case, Anthony Ludon, and create the file name based on that. The location, let's select the export folder of our project and hit save. I'm going to render a single clip at a time. Let's go video and format. I'm going to do MP4. Whoops. There we go. The codec, I'm going to use H.264 for this. Resolution, I'm going to deliver this in 1080 HD. And timeline frame rate is totally fine there. Quality, I usually set to automatic. And since a lot of people put these on YouTube, I know that they like the encoding, the entropy mode as CABAC and the encoding profile as high, I think. Oops. Yeah, it's high. Okay, perfect. So now we're going to queue up our render queue. To do that, I'm going to right-click on each of these clips one at a time and say render this clip. That'll just set the in point and the out point to that individual comedian's clip and add it to the render queue. And I'm going to select add to render queue. Here goes the next person. I'll do render queue and all the way down the line. All right, now we've got our entire render queue lined up. All I have to do is click render all and it'll kick out all of these bad boys soon. That's all for today. Thanks so much for watching. If you have any questions, drop in the comments below and I'll see you in the next one. Bye. See ya. I think that was it. Well, I hope so. I'm not doing this again.